The whip cracked against Hay's ribs, making my loyal dog yelp in pain. I watched helplessly as Wang, the market overseer, kicked me in the stomach, grinding my face into the dirt. "Know your place, peasant," he spat, while his cronies laughed, and destroyed my entire harvest. They beat my dog for defending me, stole every coin I had, and threw me out like garbage, all because I couldn't pay their extortion fees. That night, as I cleaned Hay's wounds, something inside me changed forever. These corrupt officials had beaten and humiliated people for years, taking whatever they wanted. They thought they could hurt my dog and walk away. They were wrong. I sold everything I owned and disappeared to the capital. 1 year later, I returned to that same market, but this time I brought something with me. Absolute power and 100 guards. The morning sun barely pierced through the thick market awnings as I set up my meager stall, my dog Hay sitting faithfully by my side. The worn wooden planks creaked under the weight of my harvest. A few bags of millet, some wilted vegetables, and dried herbs I'd gathered from the mountainside. It wasn't much, but it was all I had to feed us for another month. Hay's ears perked up suddenly and a low growl rumbled in his throat. I followed his gaze to see Wang and Chen, the market overseers, making their rounds. Their silk robes stood, in stark contrast to the patched clothing of us vendors. Behind them trailed 3 guards, their hands resting casually on sword hilts. Wang stopped at each stall, his beady eyes calculating profits while Chen recorded payments in a leather-bound ledger. The butcher handed over a heavy pouch without protest. The silk merchant bowed deeply as he offered what looked like half his earnings. When they reached old Zhang's vegetable stand, the elderly man's hands shook as he counted out copper coins. "That's all?" Wang's voice cut through the morning bustle. "Your stall takes up prime space, old man. The fee has doubled." Zhang's face paled. "But, honored overseer, I already paid the increase last month. I have nothing left." Wang's lip curled. "Then perhaps your granddaughter can work off the debt." His eyes gleamed as he gestured toward the young girl helping Zhang arrange cabbages. My stomach churned. Everyone knew what happened to girls who worked off debts for Wang. They disappeared into his compound and were never seen again. The crowd fell silent as Wang and Chen approached my stall. Hay stood, placing himself between us, his hackles raised. "Li," Wang drawled, examining my pitiful display. "Still scratching at dirt like a dog?" "I have your payment," I said quickly, reaching for the small pouch I'd prepared. It contained every coin I'd saved, leaving nothing for seeds or tools. Wang weighed the pouch in his palm, then tossed it to Chen. "This won't cover it." My heart sank. "That's the standard fee. I counted it twice." "The standard fee is whatever I say it is." Wang's eyes narrowed. "And you're taking up space that could be used by real merchants." "Please, I need this space to sell." Wang's hand shot out, sweeping my carefully arranged goods to the ground. Millet scattered across the dirt. Vegetables rolled into the mud. "There, now you have nothing to sell." Hay lunged forward with a warning bark. In an instant, Wang's guards moved. The first kick caught Hay in the ribs, sending him sprawling. Another guard brought his wooden staff down hard across Hay's back. My loyal friend yelped in pain, trying to crawl toward me. "No!" I shouted, rushing forward. "Please, he's just a dog!" Wang's fist connected with my jaw, snapping my head back. I tasted blood as I hit the ground. A boot pressed against my chest, pinning me down. "Just a dog?" Wang sneered. "Like master, like pet. Both need to learn their place." The beating continued. I watched helplessly as they struck Hay again and again. His whimpers tore at my heart. When I tried to rise, Chen kicked me in the stomach, driving the air from my lungs. "Look at him," Wang announced to the crowd. "This is what happens to those who forget their station." Through blurred vision, I saw the other vendors turn away. The butcher studied his cleaver. The silk merchant suddenly found his fabrics fascinating. Even old Zhang, who I'd helped countless times, avoided my gaze. Fear had paralyzed them all. Wang grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking my head up. "You're done here, peasant. If I see you in this market again, Your dog dies. Understand? I nodded weakly, tasting dirt and blood. Say it, he demanded. I understand, I mumbled through swollen lips. Wang released me with a shove. Clean up this mess, he ordered his guards. They kicked my scattered goods into the drainage ditch, ensuring nothing could be salvaged. As Wang and Chen moved on, their laughter echoed through the market. Business resumed as if nothing had happened. Vendors called out their wares. Customers haggled over prices. The world kept turning, while I lay broken in the dirt. Hay limped to my side, whimpering softly. One eye was swollen shut and his breathing came in ragged gasps. But still he tried to lick my face, to comfort me even in his pain. I gathered my strength and lifted him gently. Every step sent spikes of agony through my ribs, but I didn't stop until we were out of the market. Behind us, life continued as normal. The incident already forgotten by those too afraid to remember. The journey home took twice as long as usual. Hay couldn't walk, so I carried him the entire way. My small hut stood at the edge of the village, isolated and crumbling. Inside, I laid Hay on his favorite blanket and fetched water to clean his wounds. As I worked, my hands steady despite my rage, I catalogued every injury. 3 broken ribs, a split lip, bruises covering his entire body. But it was the fear in his eyes that hurt most. Hay had always been brave, always protective. Now, he flinched at shadows. Night fell as I finished tending to him. I sat in the darkness listening to his labored breathing, replaying the day's events. Wang's cruelty wasn't random. It was calculated, designed to remind everyone of their place in his world. He didn't just want money, he wanted submission. He wanted us to accept that our lives meant nothing. The more I thought about it, the clearer the pattern became. Wang and Chen had built an empire of fear. They took whatever they wanted, money, goods, even people. The missing girls, the mysterious fires that destroyed the homes of those who complained, the vendors who vanished after questioning fees. This wasn't about one bad day or one cruel man. This was systematic oppression, enforced through violence and protected by silence. Wang believed his position made him untouchable. He thought peasants like me would always cower, always submit, always accept our fate. He was wrong. As Hay slept fitfully beside me, I made my decision. I wouldn't just leave the market, I wouldn't just protect my dog. I would destroy everything Wang had built. I would climb so high that he'd have to crane his neck to see me. And when I returned, it would be with the power to crush him completely. I had nothing left to lose. My goods were gone, my savings taken, my body broken. But my mind remained sharp, and my will had never been stronger. Wang had made one critical mistake. He'd left me alive. That night I began planning. I would need money for the journey to the capital. I would need a new identity. I would need to learn the games of power that men like Wang played. It would take time, patience, and sacrifice. But I had something Wang could never understand. Purpose, born from pain. I looked at Hay, his chest rising and falling slowly. I promise you, I whispered, they'll pay for this. Every single one of them. The next morning I sold my land to the village elder. He offered half its value, knowing my desperation, but I didn't argue. I sold my tools, my furniture, everything, except the clothes on my back. Word spread quickly about my departure. Some whispered I was running away in shame. Others said Wang had finally broken me. Let them talk. Let them think I was defeated. It would make my return all the more shocking. I arranged for Hay to stay with widow Lin, the only person who'd shown us kindness. She promised to care for him until I returned. As I said goodbye, Hay whined softly, sensing the separation. I knelt beside him, careful of his injuries. Wait for me, I told him. When I come back, no one will ever hurt you again. With a small pouch of coins and a heart full of cold fury, I set out for the capital. Behind me lay everything I'd known. My home, my dog, my identity. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the long road to power. But I welcomed it all. because somewhere in that distant city, my transformation would begin. And one day, Wang would learn that even peasants could become storms. The capital stretched before me like a maze of stone and ambition. Towering walls cast long shadows over crowded streets where merchants, officials, and beggars all competed for space. The air smelled of incense, cooking oil, and opportunity. I stood at the city gates with nothing but a small pouch of coins and a burning need for vengeance. My first night, I slept in an alley behind a noodle shop using my pack as a pillow. Rats scurried past my feet while drunken officials stumbled by, their silk robes dragging in the mud. I watched them carefully, noting their mannerisms, their speech patterns, the way they carried themselves. If I wanted to infiltrate their world, I needed to understand it completely. The next morning, I sold my peasant clothes and bought a simple scholar's robe from a second-hand dealer. The fabric was worn but clean, perfect for someone claiming to be a failed examination candidate seeking work. I practiced my story as I walked. Li Zhang, from a distant province, educated by a village, teacher, seeking employment as a clerk or tutor. For 3 days, I observed the city's rhythm. Officials arrived at government buildings just after sunrise. Servants entered through back gates. Guards changed shifts at specific hours. Money flowed through certain channels, and power concentrated in particular hands. I memorized it all. On the 4th day, I approached the residence of Deputy Minister Feng, a mid-level official known for his extensive household staff. His head servant, a gray-haired man named Butler Wu, was reviewing supply ledgers in the courtyard when I presented myself. "I seek employment," I said, bowing deeply. "I can read, write, and calculate. I learn quickly and work hard." Butler Wu studied me with shrewd eyes. "Can you prove your literacy?" I recited a passage from the Analects, then solved a complex arithmetic problem he posed. My village teacher had been thorough, and my mind had always been quick with numbers. "We need someone to manage household accounts," Butler Wu said finally. "The pay is minimal, but you'll have food and lodging. Can you start immediately?" I bowed again. I am grateful for the opportunity. That night in the servants' quarters, I began my true education. The other servants gossiped freely about their masters, revealing the intricate web of relationships that governed the capital. Deputy Minister Feng owed favors to Magistrate Chen. Magistrate Chen's wife was Minister Zhou's cousin. Minister Zhou controlled the western trade routes, which connected to my home province. And there, buried in casual conversation, I found my first lead, Wang. My tormentor from the market reported to Minister Zhou's trade commission. His position was bought, not earned, through bribes and connections. More importantly, he was skimming profits and falsifying reports. I filed this information away and focused on excelling in my duties. Within a month, I'd reorganized the household, accounts, identifying waste and improving efficiency. Deputy Minister Feng noticed and had me audit his personal finances. There, I discovered something valuable: evidence of his own embezzlement. Instead of exposing him, I quietly corrected the discrepancies and created a system that made future theft impossible. When Feng realized what I'd done, he called me to his study. "You could have blackmailed me," he said, pouring 2 cups of wine. "Why didn't you?" "A wise man once told me that loyalty earns more than threats," I replied. It was a calculated risk, but I'd read Feng correctly. He smiled. "Indeed. I need someone I can trust. How would you like to be my personal secretary?" The promotion gave me access to official documents and correspondence. I learned to forge signatures, decode messages, and navigate bureaucratic channels. More importantly, I gained insight into the corruption that riddled the entire system. Officials sold positions, judges accepted bribes, and merchants bought protection. Wang was just one tumor in a diseased body. 6 months into my service, opportunity struck. Deputy Minister Feng's daughter, Mei, was returning from visiting relatives when bandits attacked her carriage. I was accompanying a routine document delivery when I heard the screams. Without hesitation, I grabbed a fallen guard's sword and charged into the fray. The bandits, expecting easy prey, were caught off guard. I'd never fought with a sword before, but rage and desperation made me fearless. I took several wounds but managed to drive them off long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Mei was unharmed, and Deputy Minister Feng was overcome with gratitude. "Name your reward," he said, as physicians tended my injuries. "I seek only to serve," I replied, knowing that his gratitude was worth more than gold. Word of my actions spread quickly. Minister Zhou himself commended my bravery and offered me a position in his department. I accepted, moving one step closer to my true target. In Minister Zhou's service, I gained access to trade records and inspection reports. I studied them obsessively, mapping the network of corruption that enriched men like Wang. Every night I copied documents, built cases, and planned my ascent. The breakthrough came when I uncovered a smuggling operation involving several high-ranking officials. Instead of exposing them all, I strategically leaked information that implicated only Minister Zhou's rivals. The resulting scandal cleared the path for Zhou's promotion, and I rode his coattails upward. Within 11 months of arriving in the capital, I was appointed Inspector General of Western Trade Routes. The position gave me authority over all market overseers in my home province, including Wang. But I wasn't ready to strike yet. Power without preparation was meaningless. I spent another month gathering evidence, placing informants, and building an airtight case. I discovered that Wang's crimes extended far beyond extortion. He ran a child trafficking ring, selling orphans and debtors' children to brothels and mines. He'd ordered the murders of at least 12 people who'd threatened to expose him. His wealth came from blood and suffering. I also learned that Wang had powerful protectors in the capital who profited from his activities. Taking him down would require not just authority, but overwhelming force and irrefutable evidence. I began my final preparations. I secured command of an elite guard unit, men known for their loyalty and discipline. I compiled detailed dossiers on every official connected to Wang. I mapped out escape routes, safe houses, and contingency plans. Most importantly, I chose the perfect moment for my return, market day, when Wang would be making his rounds, when all his victims would be present to witness his fall. The night before my departure, I stood on my balcony overlooking the capital. In less than a year, I'd transformed from a beaten peasant to one of the most powerful men in the province. But this was never about personal glory. Every step, every sacrifice, every calculated move had led to this moment. Tomorrow, I would return to that market not as Li the peasant, but as Inspector General Zhou. Tomorrow, Wang would learn that cruelty has consequences, that power can shift, that even the lowest dog can become a wolf. I thought of He, waiting faithfully with Widow Lin. I thought of old Zhang's trembling hands as he counted coins. I thought of the missing girls and murdered witnesses. I thought of every person Wang had crushed beneath his boots. Tomorrow, I whispered to the night, tomorrow justice comes. I returned to my desk and reviewed the plans one final time. Every detail was perfect, every contingency accounted for. Wang thought he was untouchable, protected by his web of corruption and fear. He was about to learn how wrong he was. As dawn approached, I donned my official robes, the red silk marking my rank and authority. I strapped on my sword, though I hoped I wouldn't need it. Violence was Wang's language. I would speak to him in the language of power, the only thing he truly understood. The guards assembled in the courtyard, their armor gleaming in the early light. 100 of the Empire's finest soldiers, ready to enforce the law without question or hesitation. I mounted my horse and gave the signal to march. The sun was just rising as we departed the capital. Ahead lay the road home, the market, and my reckoning with Wang. I felt no fear, no doubt, only cold certainty. The peasant who'd been beaten in the dirt was gone. In his place rode something far more dangerous, a man with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The wheel of fortune had turned. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and I would make certain that Wang's fall was as complete and merciless as the suffering he'd inflicted on others. My position as a servant in Deputy Minister Feng's household provided the perfect cover for my true mission. Each morning I rose before dawn to organize ledgers and correspondence, But my real work began after sunset. While the household slept, I studied every document that passed through my hands, piecing together the intricate web of corruption that connected the capital to my home province. The first breakthrough came 3 weeks into my employment. A sealed letter arrived from the Western Trade Commission, addressed to Deputy Minister Feng. As I prepared it for delivery, I noticed the wax seal was poorly applied. Using techniques I'd learned from watching the household staff, I carefully opened it, memorized its contents, and resealed it perfectly. The letter contained routine trade reports, but buried within the numbers was an irregularity. Certain market fees were listed, twice under different categories. Cross-referencing with other documents revealed a pattern. Officials like Wang were submitting inflated reports, pocketing the difference, and sharing the profits with their superiors. I began maintaining a secret ledger, hidden beneath a loose floorboard in my quarters. Every discrepancy, every suspicious transaction, every name mentioned in hushed conversations found its way into my records. The other servants, grateful for my help with their duties, shared gossip freely. Kitchen maids knew which officials visited late at night. Stable boys overheard conversations between mounted messengers. Gradually, I assembled a comprehensive picture of the empire's hidden economy. My opportunity for advancement came unexpectedly. Deputy Minister Feng's daughter, Mei, fell ill with a fever that resisted traditional remedies. The household was in panic, fearing the worst. I remembered herbs from my village that the local healers used for similar symptoms. Working through the night, I prepared a remedy based on my grandmother's teachings. By morning, Mei's fever had broken. Deputy Minister Feng was overjoyed. "You have hidden depths, Li Jiang," he said, using my assumed name. "Where did you learn such medicine?" "My village was poor, sir. We learned to make do with what nature provided." He nodded thoughtfully. "I've been watching you. Your work is meticulous, your discretion admirable. How would you like to handle more sensitive matters?" The promotion meant access to Feng's private study and confidential documents. Among his papers, I found correspondence with Minister Zhou, the man who ultimately controlled Wang's position. Zhou was accepting bribes from multiple market overseers, turning a blind eye to their crimes in exchange for a percentage of their theft. I also discovered something more sinister. References to special cargo appeared in certain shipping manifests. The quantities never matched standard goods, and the payments went to private accounts. It took weeks of careful investigation, but I finally decoded the truth. Wang and others like him were trafficking children. The revelation sickened me, but it also strengthened my resolve. This wasn't just about personal vengeance anymore. I was uncovering a system that destroyed countless lives. My chance to infiltrate higher circles came when Deputy Minister Feng hosted a banquet for several officials. I overheard Magistrate Chen complaining about his incompetent secretary. Seizing the moment, I volunteered to assist with his correspondence for the evening. My efficiency impressed him, and by night's end he'd offered me a position. "But sir," I protested to Feng, "I couldn't possibly leave your service." Feng smiled knowingly. "Chen is my superior. Serving him serves me. Go with my blessing." In Magistrate Chen's office, I gained access to judicial records. I learned which judges accepted bribes, which cases were buried, which witnesses disappeared. Wang's name appeared frequently, always in connection with dismissed complaints or mysterious accidents. One document chilled me to the bone, a report of a peasant who'd tried to file charges against Wang for beating his elderly father. The man was found dead in an alley 2 days later, officially ruled a robbery gone wrong. But the coroner's private notes, which I found misfiled, told a different story. The injuries were consistent with torture. I added everything to my hidden ledger, now grown to several volumes. But information alone wasn't enough. I needed authority, the kind that couldn't be bought or intimidated. Fortune smiled again when Magistrate Chen was tasked with investigating corruption in the Southern District. His regular investigators were mysteriously unavailable, tied up in other cases. I volunteered to lead the inquiry, presenting a detailed plan that impressed him with its thoroughness. The investigation was a masterpiece of misdirection. I exposed several mid-level officials, carefully choosing targets who were rivals to Chen's allies. Each conviction strengthened my reputation for integrity, while eliminating obstacles to my true goal. More importantly, I used the investigation to plant informants throughout the bureaucracy. One of these informants, a clerk in the Trade Commission, provided crucial intelligence. He'd discovered that Wang maintained a secret compound outside the market town, heavily guarded and visited only at night. Local rumors spoke of children's cries and unmarked graves. I knew I needed irrefutable evidence to bring down not just Wang, but his entire network. Using my growing influence, I arranged for the informant to be transferred to Wang's staff. He would be my eyes and ears, documenting every crime, every transaction, every visitor to that compound. Meanwhile, my success in the corruption investigation caught Minister Zhou's attention. He summoned me to his office, a vast room decorated with priceless artifacts. "You've made quite a name for yourself, Li Jiang," he said, studying me with calculating eyes. "Tell me, what drives a man to pursue justice so relentlessly?" I met his gaze steadily. "I believe in order, Minister. Corruption weakens the empire." He laughed, spoken like a true idealist. "But idealism can be dangerous without pragmatism." He leaned forward. "I could use someone with your skills, someone who understands that sometimes order requires compromise." I pretended to consider his meaning carefully. "I serve the empire, Minister. If that service requires flexibility, I can adapt." His smile widened. "Excellent. I'm appointing you as Special Inspector for the Western trade routes. You'll have authority over all market operations in the region." My heart raced, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm honored, Minister. One thing," he added, "some of our overseers employ unconventional methods. As long as the revenue flows, we don't interfere. Understood?" I bowed. "Perfectly, Minister." That night, alone in my new quarters, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. In less than a year, I'd risen from servant to special inspector. Wang was now technically my subordinate, though he didn't know it yet. Over the next month, I consolidated my position. I recruited loyal guards, men known for their honesty and courage. I established a network of informants in every major market. Most importantly, I compiled comprehensive dossiers on every official involved in Wang's operation. My planted informant in Wang's staff proved invaluable. He confirmed the child trafficking, providing dates, names, and routes. He documented the murders, the extortion, the web of corruption that protected Wang. He even managed to copy Wang's private ledgers, revealing the full extent of his crimes. I now had everything I needed: evidence, authority, and force. But I waited, choosing my moment carefully. I wanted Wang at his most vulnerable, his crimes on full display, his arrogance at its peak. The market day approached, the same day Wang had destroyed my life. I prepared my forces, briefed my guards, and arranged for backup magistrates to be standing by. Every detail was planned, every contingency considered. The night before our departure, I visited the archive room one last time. I ran my fingers over the volumes of evidence I'd compiled, thinking of every victim, every life destroyed by Wang's cruelty. Tomorrow, it would all end. I returned to my quarters and began my final preparations. My official robes were laid out, pressed and perfect. My seal of authority gleamed in its case. 100 guards awaited my command, ready to march at dawn. As I reviewed the battle plans one last time, I thought of Hay, still waiting with Widow Lin. I thought of the other victims, the ones who never got justice. Tomorrow I would speak for all of them. The wheel had turned full circle. The hunter had become the hunted. And I would make certain that Wang's judgment was as complete and merciless as the suffering he'd inflicted on others. My appointment as special inspector opened doors that had been firmly shut before. Within days, I was invited to exclusive gatherings where real power was brokered over wine and whispered conversations. Officials who once looked through servants now sought my favor. eager to align themselves with a rising star. The corruption scandal I had to expose came almost too easily. During a routine audit of the Southern Trade Commission, I discovered a massive embezzlement scheme involving 3 high-ranking officials. They had been siphoning funds meant for road maintenance into their personal accounts for years. Instead of reporting it immediately, I spent 2 weeks gathering ironclad evidence. Bank records, falsified documents, testimony from intimidated clerks. I built a case so solid that no amount of influence could make it disappear. When I finally presented my findings to Minister Joe, he was both impressed and concerned. The officials I'd exposed were powerful men with dangerous connections. "Are you certain about this?" Joe asked, flipping through my report. "These men have friends in high places." "The evidence speaks for itself, Minister. If we ignore this, we become complicit." He studied me for a long moment. "Very well, but be prepared for consequences." The arrest made headlines throughout the capital. 3 prominent officials led away in chains, their assets seized, their families disgraced. The emperor himself commended my diligence, and suddenly, everyone wanted to be seen with Li Jiang, the incorruptible inspector. But the real victory came in the aftermath. The convicted officials, desperate to reduce their sentences, began naming names. They revealed a network of corruption that stretched from the capital to the furthest provinces. And buried in their confessions were multiple references to Wang and his illegal activities. I used this momentum to request expanded authority. "Minister Joe," I argued, "we need to clean house throughout the western trade routes. The rot goes deeper than we imagined." Joe, riding high on the success of the scandal, agreed. "I'm promoting you to Inspector General. Root out every trace of corruption, show no mercy." Perfect. Now I had legitimate reason to investigate Wang directly. My next move was calculated to generate maximum loyalty among my subordinates. Using seized assets from the corruption case, I increased wages for honest guards and clerks. I established a reward system for reporting irregularities. Within weeks, I had transformed the Western Division from a nest of corruption into a model of efficiency. The guards assigned to me were hand-picked from the Imperial Academy. Young, idealistic, and eager to prove themselves. I trained them personally, emphasizing discipline and justice over blind obedience. When I finally revealed our true mission, they were ready to follow me anywhere. Meanwhile, my network of informants expanded exponentially. Servants, merchants, even some of Wang's own men began feeding me information. They sensed the shifting winds and wanted to be on the winning side. The most valuable intelligence came from unexpected sources. A brothel owner, whose establishment catered to officials, approached me secretly. She had kept meticulous records of her clients' conversations, including detailed discussions of Wang's child trafficking operation. "Why help me?" I asked her. Her eyes hardened. "Wang sold me my own niece. By the time I found her, it was too late." With her information, I mapped out Wang's entire network. Supply routes, safe houses, corrupt officials who provided protection. The operation was more extensive than I'd imagined, reaching into neighboring provinces. I also discovered something that made my blood run cold. Wang was planning a major shipment of children, the largest yet. 30 young souls destined for slavery or worse. The transaction was scheduled for next month, coinciding with the harvest festival when authorities would be distracted. This accelerated my timeline. I couldn't wait for the perfect moment while children's lives hung in the balance. I began positioning my pieces for the final confrontation. Guards were reassigned to strategic locations. Magistrates loyal to me were placed on standby. I even arranged for a special courier to deliver certain documents to the emperor himself, if anything went wrong. The breakthrough in Wang's inner circle came when one of his lieutenants, a man named Chen Wei, approached my agents. His conscience had finally overwhelmed his fear. "I have done terrible things," he confessed, "but I can't watch children die anymore." Chen Wei provided detailed layouts of Wang's compound, guard rotations, and most importantly, the location of Wang's private records. These documents contained not just evidence of his crimes, but names of every official he'd bribed, every judge he'd bought, every murder he'd ordered. With this information, I planned a two-pronged attack. While I confronted Wang publicly in the market, a second team would raid his compound and secure the evidence. The night before our departure, I called my lieutenants together for a final briefing. Maps covered the table, marked with approach routes and contingency plans. Remember, I told them, Wang is dangerous when cornered. He has men loyal to him, men who know they'll hang if he falls. Stay alert. Captain Liu, my second in command, studied the plans. What about his protectors in the capital? Won't they interfere? I smiled coldly. By the time they learn what's happening, it will be too late. I've arranged for certain letters to be delayed, certain messengers to be detained. Wang will be isolated. As the meeting concluded, I retreated to my quarters for final preparations. My official robes were laid out, the red silk and gold embroidery marking my rank. My sword, though mostly ceremonial, was sharp enough for real combat if needed. I spent the remaining hours reviewing everything I knew about Wang. His habits, his weaknesses, his likely reactions. I had studied him like a hunter studies prey, learning every pattern, every tendency. Before dawn, I donned my robes and stepped into the courtyard where my guards waited. 100 men in perfect formation, their armor polished, their weapons ready. These weren't just soldiers, they were instruments of justice. As I mounted my horse, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From beaten peasant to inspector general in less than a year. Every humiliation, every sacrifice, every careful move had led to this moment. The sun was just beginning to rise as we rode out of the capital. The road stretched before us, leading back to the market where it all began. But this time, I wasn't returning as a victim. I was returning as judgment incarnate. Wang thought. His position made him untouchable. He believed his web of corruption would protect him forever. He was about to learn how wrong he was. As we rode, I rehearsed the confrontation in my mind. I knew exactly where Wang would be, exactly what he would be doing. Market day followed strict patterns, and Wang was nothing if not predictable in his cruelty. My informants had confirmed he would be making his rounds at mid-morning, collecting his fees and terrorizing vendors. He would be surrounded by his usual guards, confident in his power, never suspecting that his world was about to end. The irony wasn't lost on me. Wang had created his own destroyer. By beating a peasant and his dog, by grinding my face in the dirt, he had forged the weapon that would bring him down. Every act of cruelty had only strengthened my resolve. Every abuse of power had taught me how to dismantle it. As the miles passed beneath our horses' hooves, I felt no anxiety, no doubt. Only cold, clear purpose. The wheel of fortune had turned and Wang's time had run out. By nightfall, we had covered half the distance. We camped in a secure location, my guards maintaining vigilant watch. Tomorrow, we would arrive at the market. Tomorrow, Wang would face the consequences of his actions. I stood at the edge of our camp looking toward my old home. Somewhere out there, Hay waited with Widow Lin. Soon, very soon, I would keep my promise. No one would ever hurt him again. The stars wheeled overhead as I returned to my tent. One more night, and then justice would be served. Wang had taught me the language of power, and tomorrow I would speak it fluently. The hunter had become the hunted. The peasant had become the storm. And in the morning, the reckoning would begin. Dawn broke over the eastern hills as we approached the market town. I had timed our arrival perfectly. The morning mist still clung to the streets, and most vendors were just beginning to set up their stalls. Our horses' hooves echoed against cobblestones as 100 guards rode in formation behind me. I had divided my forces strategically. 50 guards would accompany me to the market, while the other 50, led by Captain Liu, would simultaneously raid Wang's compound on the outskirts of town. Every detail had been planned, every contingency considered. As we entered the town proper, people stopped and stared. Children ran alongside our procession, marveling at the gleaming armor and imperial banners. Shopkeepers emerged from their stores, whispering among themselves. They had never seen such a display of imperial power in their small market town. The market square hadn't changed. The same worn stones, the same wooden stalls, the same smell of livestock and spices. But today everything felt different. Today, I wasn't a peasant begging for mercy. I was Inspector General Joe, and I carried the weight of imperial authority. Wang was exactly where I knew he would be, making his rounds with Chen and his usual contingent of guards. He wore the same silk robes, carried the same leather ledger, displayed the same arrogant swagger. He was berating a vegetable seller when our procession entered the square. The transformation in the market was instantaneous. Conversations died, mid-sentence. Merchants froze in place. Even the animals seemed to sense the tension, falling unnaturally quiet. Wang turned at the commotion, his eyes widening at the sight of imperial guards. For a moment, confusion crossed his face. Then his gaze found me at the head of the column, and I saw the exact moment recognition dawned. I dismounted slowly, deliberately, my red robes marking my rank for all to see. My guards fanned out behind me, their presence a wall of imperial power. I walked toward Wang with measured steps, each one echoing in the silent square. "Overseer Wang," I called out, my voice carrying across the market. "I am Inspector General, Joe here on imperial business." Wang's face had gone pale, but he tried to maintain his composure. "Inspector General," he said, bowing slightly. "We weren't expecting an official visit." I stopped 10 paces from him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. "No, I imagine you weren't." His guards shifted nervously, looking between their master and my soldiers. They were street thugs, used to bullying peasants. Faced with trained imperial guards, their courage evaporated. "Is there some problem, Inspector General?" Wang asked, attempting a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Indeed there is." I pulled a scroll from my robe, the imperial seal visible for all to see. "Wang Dalun, you are hereby arrested for corruption, extortion, murder, and trafficking in human lives." The market erupted in whispers. Wang's face contorted with fear and rage. "This is absurd. I am a loyal servant of the Empire." "Are you?" I gestured to my guards. "Search him." As my men moved forward, Wang's guards made a fatal mistake. One reached for his sword. Before the blade cleared its scabbard, 3 crossbow bolts struck him down. The others immediately dropped their weapons and fell to their knees. Wang backed away, but there was nowhere to run. My guards seized him, stripping away his outer robe and searching him thoroughly. They found what I knew they would: a hidden dagger, a pouch of poison, and documents bearing official seals. "Bring him," I ordered. They dragged Wang to the center of the square, forcing him to his knees before me. The same spot where he had ground my face into the dirt a year ago. The symmetry was perfect. "Do you remember this place?" I asked him quietly. Wang looked up at me, and I saw the moment he truly recognized me. Not as Inspector General Joe, but as Li, the peasant he had beaten and humiliated. "You," he whispered, his face draining of all color. "Yes," I replied. "Me." I turned to address the crowd that had gathered. "People of this market, you have lived under this man's tyranny for too long. Today that ends." From my robe, I produced a thick sheaf of documents. "I have here evidence of Wang's crimes, testimony from his victims, records of bribes paid and received, proof of murders ordered and carried out." I began reading aloud. Names of people who had disappeared, children sold into slavery, families destroyed. With each revelation, the crowd's murmurs grew louder, angrier. Wang tried to protest, but I silenced him with a gesture. "You will have your chance to speak at trial." At that moment, a messenger arrived from Captain Liu. The raid on Wang's compound had been successful. They had found the children he planned to sell, still alive and now free. They had also discovered his private records, including detailed accounts of every crime he had committed. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source. Wang's own subordinates, seeing their master's fall, began confessing publicly. Chen, his second-in-command, stepped forward. "I bear witness," Chen announced to the crowd. "Everything the Inspector General says is true. I have seen it all." One by one, Wang's men abandoned him. They revealed locations of mass graves, named corrupt officials who had protected him, described atrocities that made even my hardened guards blanch. The final blow came when we brought out Wang's private ledgers. In his own handwriting, he had recorded every bribe, every murder, every child sold. His arrogance had been so complete that he never imagined these records would be used against him. As the evidence mounted, the crowd's anger turned to rage. These were people who had suffered under Wang's rule for years, too afraid to speak out. Now, protected by imperial guards, they found their voices. Old Zhang, the vegetable seller, stepped forward. He killed my son for speaking against him. The butcher pointed an accusing finger. He took my daughter. I never saw her again. More and more people came forward with their stories. The weight of accumulated suffering was staggering. Through it all, Wang knelt in the dirt, his arrogance finally broken. He no longer tried to deny or deflect. He simply stared at the ground, perhaps finally comprehending the magnitude of his crimes. When the last accuser had spoken, I addressed Wang directly. You asked if I remembered this place. I remember everything. I remember my dog's cries as your men beat him. I remember the taste of dirt as you ground my face into it. I remember your words. Know your place, peasant. I leaned closer. I found my place, and now you will find yours. I turned to my guards. Take him to the capital. He will face imperial justice. As they dragged Wang away, he found his voice one last time. Please, he begged. Mercy. I looked at him coldly. Did you show mercy to those children? To the families you destroyed? To the people you murdered? He had no answer. With Wang secured, I addressed the crowd once more. The days of corruption in this market are over. New overseers will be appointed. Honest men who serve the people, not their own greed. Anyone who suffers injustice may appeal directly to my office. The cheers that erupted were deafening. People wept openly, embracing each other, celebrating the end of their nightmare. As the crowd dispersed, I had one final duty to perform. I mounted my horse and rode to Widow Lin's cottage on the outskirts of town. She was waiting at the gate, Hay beside her. When Hay saw me, he bounded forward, his tail wagging furiously. His injuries had healed, though he still carried scars. I knelt and embraced him, feeling his warm breath against my neck. I promised I would return, I whispered to him. And I promised no one would ever hurt you again. Widow Lin approached, tears in her eyes. We heard what happened in the market. Is it true? Is Wang really gone? He's gone, I confirmed. And he will never return. That evening, as the sun set over the market town, I stood in the square where my journey had begun. The stalls were closed now, the crowds gone home. But the air felt different, lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted. Tomorrow, I would return to the capital with Wang in chains. His trial would expose the entire network of corruption, bringing down dozens of officials who had enabled his crimes. The emperor would commend my service and my position would be secure. But tonight I simply stood with Hay at my side, remembering the peasant I had been and acknowledging the man I had become. Justice had been served, not through random vengeance, but through careful planning and the legitimate use of power. The wheel had turned full circle, the market was free, and I had kept my promise. The morning sun cast long shadows across the market square as I prepared for Wang's public judgment. My guards had erected a platform overnight, visible from every corner of the marketplace. Word had spread quickly, and people from neighboring villages had traveled through the night to witness justice being served. Wang knelt in the center of the platform, his silk robes replaced with prisoner's garb, his hands bound with iron chains. The man who had terrorized this market for years now looked small and pathetic, his eyes darting fearfully at the growing crowd. I stood before the assembled masses, my red robes of office rippling in the morning breeze. Behind me, my guards displayed the evidence we had gathered, ledgers documenting bribes, maps showing trafficking routes, and most damning of all, a scroll bearing the names of every child Wang had sold into slavery. People of this province, I began, my voice carrying across the silent square. You have gathered to witness justice. The man before you stands accused of crimes that shock the conscience. I unrolled the first scroll. Wang Delun, former overseer of this market, you are charged with the following crimes: systematic extortion from honest merchants, accepting bribes to pervert justice, ordering the murders of 17 citizens who threatened to expose your corruption, and trafficking 38 children into slavery. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I read each charge. Mothers clutched their children closer. Men who had suffered under Wang's rule stood taller, their faces hard with righteous anger. The evidence against you is overwhelming, I continued. Your own ledgers condemn you. Your former associates have testified against you. The children you sold have been rescued and have identified you as their captor. Wang raised his head, desperation in his eyes. Inspector General, please. I was merely following orders. There are others above me who— Silence, I commanded. You had countless opportunities to choose a different path. Instead, you chose cruelty and greed. I turned to the crowd. In accordance with imperial law, I strip Wang Delun of all titles, ranks, and privileges. His assets are hereby seized and will be distributed to his victims. My guard stepped forward, removing Wang's last symbols of authority: his official seal, his jade pendant, even his expensive boots. They left him barefoot and humble, a powerful reminder of how far he had fallen. But that is not all, I announced. Given the severity of his crimes, particularly those against children, I invoke an ancient law. Wang Delun shall face judgment from those he wronged most directly. The crowd stirred as I gestured to my guards. They brought forward a group of people I had carefully selected: parents of missing children, merchants he had extorted, families of those he had murdered. Each carried a stone, symbol of their right to pass judgment. Wang's eyes widened in terror as he realized what was happening. No, please, I beg for mercy. I looked at him coldly. Did you show mercy to the children you sold? To the families you destroyed? One by one, his victims approached the platform. Old Zhang was first, his weathered hands trembling as he held his stone. This is for my son, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You had him killed because he spoke against your corruption. The butcher came next. For my daughter, who you sold to slavers when I couldn't pay your bribes. Each accuser spoke their piece, naming their loss, declaring their grief. The stones piled up before Wang, each one a testament to his cruelty. When the last victim had spoken, I addressed Wang one final time. Your fate now rests with those you wronged. They will decide your punishment. The crowd fell silent as Wang's victims conferred. These were not vengeful people by nature, but simple folk who had suffered enormously. Their deliberation was brief, but solemn. Old Zhang stepped forward as their spokesperson. We have decided. Wang Delun shall experience every crime he committed against us. He will work in the fields under the sun, as we did while he stole our earnings. He will know hunger, as our families did when he took our food. He will feel the lash, as our loved ones did in his private prison. And finally, Zhang continued, his voice hardening, he will spend the rest of his days in the deepest imperial prison, where he can reflect on the lives he destroyed. I nodded solemnly. So it is decreed. Let the sentence be carried out. As my guards led Wang away, his screams for mercy echoed across the square. But there would be no mercy for him, just as there had been none for his victims. With Wang's judgment complete, I turned to the more important task: rebuilding the market's integrity. I had brought with me a team of honest administrators, carefully vetted and trained. From this day forward, I announced, this market will operate under new rules. Fair weights and measures will be enforced. Disputes will be settled by law, not by bribes. Any official found accepting illegal payments will face the same fate as Wang. I introduced the new overseers, men and women chosen for their integrity rather than their connections. Each swore a public oath to serve the people honestly. Furthermore, I continued, I'm establishing a direct line of communication to my office. Any citizen who suffers injustice may appeal directly to the Inspector General. No longer will corruption hide in the shadows. The crowd cheered, but I raised my hand for silence. There is one more matter to address. The children Wang intended to sell have been rescued. They need homes, families, love. Who among you will open your hearts to these innocent souls? The response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of families stepped forward, offering to adopt the rescued children. Within hours, every child had found a new home, surrounded by people who would cherish and protect them. As the day progressed, I oversaw the redistribution of Wang's assets. His mansion became a school. His warehouses were converted into public granaries. His gold was used to establish a fund for victims of corruption. By sunset, the transformation was complete. The market that had been a symbol of oppression was now a beacon of justice. People walked with their heads held high, no longer fearing the crack of an overseer's whip. That evening, I sat with Hay in Widow Lin's garden, watching the stars emerge. My loyal dog rested his head on my lap, content and at peace. The scars from his beating had healed, though they would never completely disappear. You started all of this, I told him softly. Your pain woke something in me that changed everything. Widow Lin joined us, bringing tea. Will you stay, Inspector? General, the people would welcome you as their leader. I shook my head. My work isn't finished. Wang was just one corrupt official. There are others like him throughout the empire. But I promise to return regularly to ensure the reforms take root. The next morning I prepared to return to the capital. The townspeople lined the streets to see us off, their faces reflecting gratitude and newfound hope. Children waved imperial flags, and merchants offered blessings for safe travel. As we rode out, I looked back one last time at the market where my journey had begun. The same stones, the same stalls, but everything had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by something precious. Dignity. In the capital, Wang's trial exposed a vast network of corruption. Dozens of officials fell, their crimes brought to light by the evidence we had gathered. The emperor himself commended my service, granting me expanded authority to root out corruption throughout the empire. But I never forgot my origins. Every month I returned to that small market town, walking among the stalls with Hay at my side. We became a symbol, a reminder that justice could prevail, that even the lowest peasant could rise to challenge tyranny. The market prospered under honest leadership. Trade flourished, families thrived, and children played freely in streets where they once cowered in fear. The transformation served as a model for other markets throughout the province. Wang spent his remaining days in prison, forgotten by the world he once terrorized. Sometimes I wondered if he ever understood the magnitude of his crimes, if he ever felt genuine remorse. But it didn't matter. Justice had been served, and the people were free. Years later, I still carried the memory of that day when Wang's men beat my dog and ground my face in the dirt. But instead of bitterness, I felt gratitude. That moment of humiliation had forged me into something stronger, something capable of bringing real change. The wheel of fortune continues to turn, but now it turns more fairly. The corrupt still exist, but they know that somewhere there's an Inspector General who was once a peasant, who remembers what it means to suffer injustice, and who will never stop fighting for those who cannot fight for themselves.